The road to Thebes was not always empty. There was a time when merchants passed through it at dawn, when soldiers rode across its dust, when laughter, distant and human, could still be heard between the hills. But that was before the question. Now, the road is silent. No footsteps, no wheels, no voices, only wind, moving through broken stone, whispering across abandoned paths. They say the first man who heard it laughed, not out of courage, but because he did not understand. He had walked for days beneath the burning sun, his mind dulled by heat and hunger. When the voice came, it sounded almost human. Almost. Before you enter the city, the voice was calm, measured, patient. You must answer me this. He looked around. There was no one. No guard, no gatekeeper, no soldier to block his path, only the ruins of an old outcrop of stone and the long shadow it cast across the road. Then, something moved. It did not step forward. It unfolded. A shape, too large to be human, too still to be alive. And yet, it watched him. The body was that of a lion, muscles heavy beneath tawny skin, claws resting quietly against the earth. From its back, wings. Great, silent wings, folded like storm clouds at rest. And above it all, a face. Not monstrous, not at first glance. A woman's face. Calm, beautiful, unmoving. This was the Sphinx. She did not roar. She did not threaten. She only spoke. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? The man frowned, confused, annoyed. A riddle? He said. You stop me. For a riddle? The Sphinx did not move. You may pass, she said softly, if you answer correctly. And if I don't? For the first time, she smiled. You will not leave this place. The man laughed again, too loudly, too quickly. He tried to think. 4 legs, 2 legs, 3. It made no sense. It sounded like nonsense, like the rambling of a mad creature lost in the hills. I don't have time for this, he muttered, and he stepped forward. He never reached the city. They say the second man did not laugh. He listened. He thought. He answered. And he was wrong. The third begged. The fourth tried to run. The fifth never spoke at all. None of them passed. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months. The road to Thebes died. Caravans stopped coming. Messengers never arrived. Families waited at the gates for loved ones who would never return. And the question remained, unanswered. Inside the city, fear began to grow. The markets emptied. The temples filled. Whispers spread from house to house. There is something on the road. A creature. A curse. No one agreed on what it was, but everyone agreed on one thing. It could not be defeated, because it did not kill with strength. It killed with something far more dangerous. It asked. And somewhere beyond those silent roads, walking alone beneath the same indifferent sky, there was a man who had not yet heard the question. A man who believed he was running away from his fate. A man named Oedipus. Before you enter the city, answer me this. Before the roads fell silent, before the travelers disappeared, the city of Thebes was already living under a shadow. Not all curses arrive with fire. Some begin as a whisper. Long before the Sphinx appeared on the road, the gods had already turned their gaze toward Thebes, and where the gods look too long, something always breaks. The ruler of Thebes was a man named Laius, a king by title, but not a man at peace, because Laius carried a knowledge that no father should ever bear, a prophecy. It did not come as a dream, nor as a rumor. It came from the sacred mouth of the oracle, from the temple of Delphi, and it said, "You will have a son, and that son will kill you." In the world of men, a prophecy is a warning. In the world of the Greeks, It is a certainty. Laius did not question it. He feared it. And fear has a way of turning men into something else. When his son was born, there was no celebration, no feast, no joy, only a decision. The child would not be allowed to live. The baby was taken from his mother's arms, still warm, still crying, still unaware of the fate already written for him. His ankles were pierced, bound together, so that he could not crawl, could not escape, could not survive. And then he was carried away from the city, not by an enemy, not by a stranger, but by a servant, a man ordered to do what the king himself could not bear to witness, to leave the child on a mountainside and let the cold, the hunger, and time finish the work. But something unexpected happened. The servant stopped. Perhaps it was the sound of the child's breathing. Perhaps it was the way the tiny fingers moved, grasping at nothing. Or perhaps it was the quiet, unbearable weight of knowing that this was not justice, but fear. He could not do it. So instead of leaving the child to die, he gave him away to another man, a shepherd, a stranger. And just like that, the prophecy was not stopped. It was only delayed. The child was carried far from Thebes, far from the king who feared him, far from the mother who had lost him. He would grow up in another land, under another name, with another family, never knowing who he truly was, never knowing what he had already become. But the gods do not forget, and neither does fate, because while the child was being saved, while he was being carried into a new life, something else was already moving toward Thebes, not born of mercy, not shaped by human hands, a creature of punishment, of intelligence, of silence. The Sphinx. She did not come to conquer the city. She did not come to burn it. She came to wait, to sit on the edge of the road, between the world of the living and the certainty of death. And she brought with her not a weapon, but a question no one could answer, a question that would starve a city, break a kingdom, and prepare the way for the return of a child who had once been left to die. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Far from the shadows of Thebes, far from the mountain where he was meant to die, the child lived, not as an outcast, not as a curse, but as a prince. He was raised in the city of Corinth, a place of bright courtyards, white stone, and voices that carried laughter instead of fear. The king and queen of Corinth took him in as their own. They gave him a name, Oedipus. It meant swollen foot, a quiet echo of the wounds he had carried since birth. But no one spoke of that. To them, he was simply their son. He grew as all princes do. He learned to speak with confidence, to walk with purpose, to fight, to think, to lead. He was strong, not only in body, but in mind, quick to question, quick to understand. And for a time, it seemed that fate had been defeated, that the prophecy had failed, that the gods had been wrong. But truth has a way of finding its way back. It began with something small, a whisper at a gathering, a feast, a careless voice loosened by wine. "You are not their son." The words were quiet, almost lost in laughter. But not to him. Oedipus heard them, and once heard, they could not be forgotten. He confronted his parents, the king, the queen. They denied it, firmly, quickly, too quickly, and though their words were certain, something in their eyes was not. Doubt entered him, and doubt is the beginning of every tragedy. So he did what men in his world always did when the truth could not be found among people. He turned to the gods. He traveled to the sacred place, to the temple of Delphi, where the oracle spoke not with her own voice, but with something older, something unseen. He did not ask about the rumor, not directly. He asked a simpler question. "Who am I?" But the gods did not answer what he asked. They answered what he feared. The prophecy came, cold, unavoidable. You will kill your father, and you will marry your mother. There are moments when a life breaks. This was one of them. Oedipus did not question it. He did not fight it. He believed it. And in that belief, he made his choice. He would leave Corinth. He would never return. He would never see the man he called father again, never speak to the woman he called mother, because he believed that by leaving them, he could save them. He believed he could escape fate. So he walked, alone, away from the only home he had ever known, away from the people he loved, and step by step, without knowing it, he began moving toward the place where everything would be fulfilled, back toward Thebes. The road ahead was long, empty, and somewhere along that road, at a place where three paths crossed, his past and his future were waiting for him. Not as a revelation, not as a warning, but as a man, a stranger, a king. Laius, you can run from your home, but not from what you are. There is a place where three roads meet, not marked by stone, not guarded by men, just a widening in the earth where paths cross and decisions are made. In the ancient world, such places were not ordinary, they were feared. Because a crossroads is not just a meeting of roads, it is a meeting of choices, of lives, of destinies, and sometimes it is where fate waits. Oedipus arrived there alone, dust-covered, tired, but determined. He had left Corinth behind him, left behind the people he believed were his parents, in order to save them from the prophecy. He believed he was walking away from danger, but he was walking toward it. At the center of the crossroads, another traveler approached, not on foot, a chariot, its wheels carved sharply into the earth, its horses restless, its presence commanding. Inside it stood a man, older, sharp-eyed, wrapped in the authority of someone who had never been questioned. This was Laius, king of Thebes. But to Oedipus, he was only a stranger. The road was narrow, too narrow for both to pass at once. A servant walked beside the chariot. He raised his hand. "Move aside!" The words were not a request. Oedipus did not move. He had walked too far, lost too much, to step aside for a man he did not know. "I have as much right to this road as you." The servant stepped closer. "You stand before a king." But Oedipus did not bow, because he did not know, and in that ignorance, everything was sealed. The servant struck him, not enough to kill, but enough to insult, enough to ignite something already burning beneath the surface. Oedipus struck back, and in that moment, the road changed. It was no longer a path. It was a battlefield. The servant fell first. The horses panicked. The chariot twisted. Dust rose into the air like smoke. And then, Oedipus turned toward the man in the chariot, toward Laius. There are moments in life when time seems to slow. This was one of them. Two men stood facing each other, neither knowing who the other truly was, neither understanding that this moment had been written long before they were born. Laius struck first, but age had taken something from him, and Oedipus was young, strong, unforgiving. The fight did not last long. It ended with a single, final blow. The king of Thebes fell to the ground and did not rise again. Oedipus stood over the body, breathing heavily, hands still trembling from the force of what he had done. He did not feel victorious, only anger, slowly fading into something else, something quieter. He looked at the man, a stranger, nothing more. And so he turned and walked away, leaving behind him not just a body, but the first piece of the prophecy fulfilled. He had run from Corinth to save the man he believed was his father, and on that road, he had killed his real one, without knowing, without meaning to, without any way to undo it. This is how fate works. not as a storm that announces itself, but as a quiet sequence of moments, each one small, each one reasonable, until the end becomes unavoidable. And the worst part is not the act itself. It is the ignorance. Because Oedipus did not know what he had done, and because he did not know, he continued forward, toward Thebes, toward the Sphinx, toward the second half of the prophecy. Still waiting. You cannot escape fate if you cannot see it. The path to Thebes was quiet, too quiet. No birds, no voices, no movement beyond the slow shifting of dust beneath the wind. Oedipus walked alone. He had left something behind him, though he could not name it. A moment, a confrontation, a man lying still on the ground. But memory is a strange thing. It does not always follow us immediately. Sometimes it waits. Ahead, the road narrowed, not by design, not by stone, but by presence. Something was there. At first, it did not move. It seemed like part of the landscape, a shape against the rock, too still to be alive. Then, it unfolded, not with speed, not with force, but with certainty. The body of a lion, muscles resting, not tense, wings vast, but unmoving, and above it, a face, a woman's face, calm, unblinking, the Sphinx. Oedipus stopped, not out of fear, not yet, but because something in him understood that this moment mattered. You are going to Thebes. Her voice was quiet, measured, not a question. Yes. He did not ask who she was, because some things do not need to be asked. Then you must answer. A pause. The wind moved between them. Oedipus felt something unfamiliar, not fear, recognition, a strange sense that this moment had been waiting for him. Why does this feel inevitable? The Sphinx tilted her head slightly, and then she spoke, slowly. What walks? A pause. On 4 legs in the morning. Another pause, longer. 2 legs at noon. The air seemed to tighten. And 3 legs. A final stillness. In the evening, no movement, no sound, only the question. Oedipus did not answer, not immediately. He looked at her, not as one looks at a monster, but as one looks at something that knows. This is not a trap. This is a test. He repeated the words in his mind. 4 legs, morning, 2 legs, noon, 3 legs, evening. It was not about creatures. It was about time, about change, about something that transforms without ceasing to be itself. And then, quietly, he spoke. Man. The word did not echo. It settled. The Sphinx did not react. Not immediately. She simply watched him. And in that stillness, something shifted. Not in her, in him. Why does that feel like a warning? At last, the Sphinx moved. Not with anger, not with violence, but with something close to acceptance. You have answered correctly. Her voice had not changed, but something beneath it had. You understand the riddle. A pause. But you do not understand. She leaned forward slightly. Your answer. Oedipus frowned. For the first time, uncertainty entered him. What do you mean? The Sphinx did not explain. Because some truths cannot be given, only lived. She stepped back. The road behind her opened. The path to Thebes was now clear. Go, she said, and then, almost softly, your life has already begun to answer the question. Oedipus hesitated, just for a moment. Then he walked forward, past her, toward the city, toward the life that awaited him. He did not look back. Behind him, The Sphinx remained still, watching, not defeated, but finished, because her purpose was never to stop him, only to delay him until the right moment. And now, that moment had come. She turned toward the edge of the cliff, looked out across the empty land, and without fear, without hesitation, she let herself fall. And just like that, the question was gone, but its answer had only just begun. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? The gates of Thebes opened again. For the first time in months, the road was no longer feared. Word had spread quickly, faster than wind. The Sphinx is gone. No one asked how, no one asked why. Only one thing mattered. The question had been answered, and the man who answered it had survived. Oedipus entered the city not as a traveler, but as something else, a solution. People gathered. At first, cautiously, then all at once. Faces that had known only fear now search for something new. Hope. Is it true? Are we safe? Is it over? Oedipus did not raise his voice. He did not speak like a hero. Yes, he said, and that was enough, because when fear is lifted, even silence can sound like salvation. The throne of Thebes stood empty. Its king, Laius, had not returned. No one knew where he had fallen. No one knew how close the truth already was. The city needed a ruler. And in the ancient world, there is a simple logic to power. The one who saves the city becomes the one who leads it. So they turned to him, not as a stranger, but as a king. And with the throne came something else. A queen. Her name was Jocasta, widow of Laius. She had already known loss, already known fear. But when she looked at Oedipus, she did not see danger. She saw the man who ended it, the man who freed her city, the man who stood where others had fallen. And so, they were joined, not in secrecy, not in doubt, but in celebration. The city rejoiced, feasts returned, voices filled the streets. Children played where silence had once ruled. Life resumed. And for a time, it seemed complete. A man had defeated a monster. A city had been saved. A king had been crowned. The story should have ended there, but it did not. Because what looks like an ending is sometimes only the moment before the truth begins. Years passed. Oedipus ruled well. He was not cruel, not careless. He listened. He judged. He protected. The people trusted him. And in that trust, he found something he had not known before. Belonging. He had left Corinth to protect the people he loved, and now he had built a new life, a new family, children, a kingdom, a future. But beneath all of it, unseen, unchanged, the prophecy remained. Not broken, not weakened, only waiting. Because fate does not rush. It does not need to. It allows happiness. It allows peace. It allows a man to believe that he has escaped. And then, when everything is in place, it reveals the truth. It began, as these things always do, with something small, a sickness, a whisper of death in the city, a shadow returning, where light had once been restored. Thebes was not finished suffering, and neither was Oedipus. A man may solve a riddle and still not understand his life. The change did not come suddenly. It rarely does. At first, it was only a rumor, a sickness in one house, then another, a child with a fever, a man who could not stand, an animal found dead without cause, small things, easy to ignore, until they were not. Soon, the streets of Thebes began to change. The markets grew quiet again, not with fear this time, but with exhaustion. The temples filled, not with hope, but with desperation. People gathered at the palace gates, not to celebrate, but to beg. Oedipus stood before them, the same man who had once brought them salvation. Now, they looked to him again, not as a king, but as an answer. "Save us." The words were not shouted. They were weaker than that, and somehow more powerful. Oedipus did not turn away. He did not hide behind walls. "I will find the cause," he said, and he meant it, because he believed something simple, that every problem has an answer, that every curse can be understood, that every mystery can be solved. After all, had he not already done it once? So he turned once again to the gods, to the oracle, to the same sacred voice that had once spoken his fate. At Delphi, the answer came, not in riddles, not in fragments, but in something far more dangerous: clarity. "The city is polluted. The killer of King Laius lives among you. Find him, punish him, or the suffering will not end." The answer was simple, too simple. A crime, a murderer, a single man responsible for everything. And if that man could be found, everything could be restored. Oedipus accepted this without hesitation, because this was something he understood: a problem, a cause, a solution. He stood before the people once more, and he made a promise. "I will find him." A pause. "And I will punish him." There was relief, because a known enemy is always less frightening than an unseen one. And Oedipus was a man who found answers, but there was something he did not see, something no one saw. That the moment he began searching, he was no longer looking for a stranger. He was looking for himself. The search began. Witnesses were called. Stories were gathered. Fragments of the past pulled into the present. A servant who had once traveled with Laius. A memory of a crossroads. A man who had survived because he had fled. Each piece, small, but together they began to form something. A shape, a truth. And as that truth grew clearer, something inside Oedipus began to shift. Not fully, not yet, but enough to feel unease. Why does this feel familiar? He pushed it away, because some thoughts are too dangerous to follow. He continued, deeper, closer, until at last there was only one voice left to hear. The voice of a man who had once stood on a mountain, holding a child he was meant to kill. A shepherd, the final witness. He was brought before the king, old, fragile, reluctant. He did not want to speak, because some truths are not hidden by accident. They are buried on purpose. But Oedipus insisted, demanded, forced the past into the present, and at last, the man spoke. Not loudly, not clearly, but enough to destroy everything. The child did not die. A pause. I gave him away. Another, to a man from Corinth. And in that moment, the world changed. Not around Oedipus, inside him, because now the pieces no longer pointed outward. They pointed inward, toward him, toward the truth he had been running from since the beginning. No, but truth does not stop when it is denied. It continues, relentless, until it is complete. The man you seek is the man you are. There is a moment when the truth is no longer a possibility. It becomes certainty. And in that moment, everything changes. Oedipus stood in the center of the palace, not as a king, not as a savior, but as a man. with nowhere left to look, except inward. The pieces were no longer scattered. They had aligned. The child abandoned on the mountain, the prince of Corinth, the man at the crossroads, the king of Thebes, all of them were the same person, and the prophecy, the thing he had tried to escape, had not followed him. It had shaped him. I am the man. The words did not echo. They did not need to, because there was nothing left to fill. Only emptiness, only realization, only the unbearable weight of knowing, somewhere within the palace. Jocasta had already understood, before the final words were spoken, before the last truth was confirmed. She knew, because a mother does not need proof, only recognition. And when it came, it was too much. She fled. Not from the city, not from the people, but from the truth itself. There are some realizations that cannot be lived with, only escaped. Moments later, the palace fell into a deeper silence, a silence that carries meaning, a silence that confirms what no one wants to say. When Oedipus reached her, it was already done. Jocasta was gone. The queen, the wife, the mother. All the roles she had carried collapsed into one unbearable truth, and she could not endure it. Oedipus stood there, looking, understanding, and for the first time, there was no question left to answer, no mystery left to solve, no path left to walk, only consequence. He reached for the pins that held her garments, small, sharp, insignificant objects, in any other moment. But now, they became something else, a choice, because there are things the eyes should never see, and truths that once seen cannot be unseen. He drove them into his eyes, not in rage, not in madness, but in understanding, because he finally saw, and in seeing, he chose darkness. When he emerged again, he was no longer the man who had entered Thebes, no longer the man who had answered the riddle, no longer the king, only a man who had learned the answer too late. He left the palace, not carried, not guided, but walking, slowly, blind, yet finally aware. He left the city he had saved, the city he had ruled, the city he had destroyed, and no one stopped him. Because some punishments do not need to be given, they are already complete. And so the man who solved the riddle became its answer. A child on 4 legs, a man on 2, and at the end, a broken figure, walking with a third. What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 legs at noon, and 3 legs in the evening? The answer was never just a riddle. It was a life.